We are sitting with, I'm not exaggerating, probably one of the best political reporters the Southern California area ever saw, Dave Bryan. Dave, first of all, welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you for the time.
Joe Biden! Former Vice President Joe Biden just released that announcement.
Joe Biden is now a 2020 presidential candidate.
No matter how hard they try to stop us, they can't. We built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and we're going to do it again.
Tuesday, people are going to watch, and what are they going to see?
They're going to see what I think very well might be the most important moment of this campaign. Let's face it, there hasn't been much of a campaign because of the coronavirus and all the impact that that's had. So this is a real chance for people to see these two candidates face to face. Really talking about some of the most serious issues the country has ever faced.
Is it more important for Biden or for Trump?
I think it's more important for both of them.
All right, well, so it's equal.
Yeah, how's that for a nonpartisan answer?
No, it's okay.
Because on the one hand, Biden has to prove, hey, I can take on this guy, okay? He may look like he's a tough guy, and I'm very soft-spoken, but you know what? I got a lot going for me. And on the other hand, President Trump is running behind in most of the polls, and so he needs to really pick up some ground. And the first debate, the first of three presidential debates, there'll be one vice presidential as well, is, I think, the most important because it sets the tone for the rest of what's coming up. Well, and it usually has the biggest audience.
Well, I mean, we're going way back, and I'm dating myself. I was old enough to remember, I was just a kid, but I was 12 years old, but I remember the Nixon-Kennedy debates.
Me too.
I, of course, disagree with Senator Kennedy insofar as his suggestion as to what should be done.
Everybody remembers that first debate because they said Nixon looked nervous, he sweated, and Kennedy looked cool.
There's no certain road to the presidency. There are no guarantees that if you take one road or another that you will be a successful president.
But you remember that one.
That's right.
And you don't remember the other two debates they had.
That's right.
So your point is very, very important and very well taken.
It may be the most important moment of this campaign, such as it is. Okay?
Well, there was some talk that Biden shouldn't even take him on. Would that have been a mistake if he said, I'm not going to debate you?
That would have been a mistake because he would have been pounded for that. And it would have broken with tradition for decades and decades about, having these debates, that the public has a right to see the two candidates one-on-one, debating the issues. That would have been a big problem.
A lot of polls are saying that people already, for the first time in a long time in a presidential race, have already made up their mind. It doesn't matter what happens. You're either going to be for Trump, you're either going to be for Biden. Nobody's undecided. Do you believe that?
Well, I do believe there are some undecided, but it's a relatively small number. It's not. But that may be the most important group because the numbers are kind of going up and down. Biden has a lead, lately. But we saw in 2016 leads in the polls don't necessarily, dictate into winning an election. So I think this really is a key moment.
Is Biden, bluntly, is he up to the task? I mean, he's 77, going to be 78 pretty soon.
For Biden, it is a real test of, not only who is this guy, but again, is he strong enough to really put on a convincing argument, that he is the guy this country needs right now, and here's why. And so he's ahead of the polls, but this is really, really important for him, as well as obviously for President Trump, who needs to pick up some ground here.
Well, the one thing about Trump is he going to come across as a bully. Is that going to play well?
It will play well with some voters. He has really put together a coalition. They actually, I think, in many respects, turned the tide to him winning in the Electoral College 4 years ago. But it includes evangelicals, it includes business people, you name it. There are a lot of different groups, and some of them would really look. This is a referendum on Donald Trump in many ways, okay? This is really what I think this debate is about in many respects.
Well, Wallace will be commentating. He's tough. I mean, he's not going to back off. There's no question about that.
Yeah. The moderator, in some respects, it's his responsibility to point out when people say things that aren't necessarily true or haven't been proven or are, coming out of left field. Well, with President Trump, there's usually quite a bit of that. And so what I think, the difficulty for the moderator is appearing to be nonpartisan, while also pointing out, hey, but the facts say this, and this, not what you were saying. And I assume more of that will be landing on President Trump than on Biden.
No audience, so you're not going to have the cheering and the booing and what have you.
That's right.
Is that a plus for Biden?
That's a good question. I don't think it's a plus for either one, to be honest with you. Really for Trump, I think it's going to be more of a problem. Just being with the two of them in this quiet little debate. He loves to have the rallies with people cheering. That's what gets him fired up. He's a TV guy. Yeah. And he wants an audience, so I think he's going to miss it. And the same for Biden, but really for Trump.
Do both men, Biden more so than Trump, have to keep their cool? I mean, in other words, would it be a bad thing if Biden, takes off the gloves and more or less challenges Trump?
I think it really depends on the circumstances and on the moment. If President Trump goes off on some tirade, making these charges against Biden and says things that Biden feels are inappropriate, then I think Biden has to come back, and he has to come back strong.
Because that's wrong. He is the president, so you got to show a little bit of respect.
That's right.
Or with Trump, that's all off.
Well, I don't know if it's all off, but a lot of it's off.
I mean, there's never been anything like this before.
No, there hasn't. There hasn't.
Never.
No. And like I said, this is more of a referendum on the current president than any election I can ever remember.
Do you think the American public is aware of the significance of what's at stake here?
I think many people are. I think the stakes here are the highest that I've ever seen in presidential races in my lifetime. Some would say this is the most important election since the Civil War.
Right.
This election, I think, is more testing of who we are and what are we about. And this election will, in many respects, answer that question one way or the other.
Will this debate also put the heat on Trump to explain a little more why this pandemic, in the words of many people, it's his fault? Will this debate give him an opportunity to clarify that and maybe make it a little easier?
Well, you can be sure that Biden will give him the opportunity to have to defend himself, because it's probably the leading issue that Joe Biden has to go after President Trump. I mean, 200,000.
Yeah.
The numbers are just staggering, and there's so much debate about why things didn't start earlier, why things weren't done with more of a sense of urgency early on, and why it's still continuing when other countries, especially the European countries and other parts of the world, they've really knocked this thing down.
Yeah. And of course, does Biden have to explain why he would be better to be in charge in order to make this pandemic go away?
Oh yeah, there's no question.
He has to make that very clear.
Right.
He has to say, I'll do 1, 2, 3.
That's right. Very specific, very hard-hitting, no nonsense. And he's done some of that already in just, answering questions during the campaign, such as it is.
Right.
But you haven't heard much from Biden, to be honest with you.
No, you really haven't.
When you watch a news report night after night on this campaign, I'd say 75% of it is built around President Trump. Now, it's not all positive,
right,
that's for sure. Right. But, and then Biden comes on with a soundbite at the end, and that's it. So he's had a very low profile. And I think in some ways he has to change. That's one of the things he has to do, is to change that here.
What about if he's asked the question because Wallace asked him initially. He was the one that brought the question up the very first time.
That's right.
Would you accept the results of this election, good or bad? I mean, is Trump just trying to, I read different columns where he's just trying to instill fear. I mean, is he really serious of challenging the election if he loses and refuses to go?
Well, I mean, so far it's a tactic that is being used to fire up his supporters and to get them to go out to the polls. I mean, That's really a lot of what this is about.
You think this will be brought up a big issue in the debate Tuesday
I
night?
do think it will be, yes. Yeah. In fact, it's one of the 6 areas that have already been pointed out that will be.
The other, the other 5 off the top of your head, what the other 5 areas are? So,
Yeah, well,
you're going to talk whether he's going to leave or not if he loses.
That's
Okay.
right. That's
The
right.
pandemic, number 2.
The pandemic,
Okay.
of course, is one. And then you have race relations. I'm trying to think of, let me look here. I got it right here. Let's see. Supreme Court,
Okay.
right? That's another one. The economy, and the records of both candidates.
Both of them, yeah.
So
Okay.
those are the 6 things.
Can Trump get away with name calling? Could he call him Sleepy Joe?
That's a good question. I don't think he can help himself sometimes.
Okay.
So whether it would be helpful or hurtful, I wouldn't be surprised if he does call him Sleepy Joe or something, or some other new name that he's concocted. Because, Trump is a performer. Like I said, he's the TV guy.
Yeah.
He loves to be on camera. And
Is there such a thing as having a lousy performance in this one by either one and making up the next 2? Or you've got to be on your game all 3?
well, I think you got to be on your game in this one more than the other 2. I really do. I really think the first one sets the tone. I don't think either one can afford to have a bad night on this one. I think that for President Trump, who's already trailing in the polls, if he has a bad night, he's probably he's in deep trouble. And for Biden, if he has a bad night, it could shift I think the polls to a very even race because. It's not a landslide right now in the polls. It's 6 or 7 points.
Yeah, which can return.
And a lot of people haven't seen Biden in working and debating like this. So
Well, how important is it going to be for him? I mean, he's 77, going on 78.
Yeah.
How important is it for him not to look like an old man or have this senior moment, and make a slip? Mean to say something and he says something else. He's got to be perfect, doesn't he? He can't do that.
It's very important, and I might point out that in the Democrats' debates, right, while they were doing their primary debates, there were a couple of debates there where he didn't look that sharp. He can't be doing that here. That's just not going to be acceptable, So
It's a key night for him.
that's right. It really is. It may be the most important. I think for both of them, it may well be the most important night of the entire campaign.
You got any predictions of what's going to happen, or what do you think will be the outcome of debate number 1?
For Biden, the challenge is going to be presenting himself as a strong, informed, rational, free-thinking guy who can get his points across in a connecting way, And that's something we'll have to see. I think for President Trump, I think it's a matter of him drilling into some of these issues where he's been attacking Biden and portraying him as this sort of front man for the progressive, left-wing Democrats who do all kinds of crazy things. Those are the kinds of points I think that Biden is going to have to really put over in a convincing way.
Does the president have to say, "I will accept the results," or can he continue this idea that, hey, I'm gonna fight all the way if I don't like the way the election comes out? Does he have to say that Tuesday night, that I will agree to go peacefully if I don't win?
Well, yes and no.
Okay, all right.
Because on the one hand, there's a line there, okay? And if he crosses that line, which is to say, if he's saying, I'm not going to concede this no matter how many votes he gets and how few, that's going to be a problem, okay? Then it's not going to go over well. If, on the other hand, he says, I will concede if I feel this is a fair and honorable election, I think that's what he's got to do for that.
Okay. Interesting. One last thing. Way back when, Biden made a comment, maybe you remember it. He said, if I was in high school and Donald Trump was in my class, I'd take him behind the gym and I'd knock the crap out of him. Remember that?
Yeah.
Can he come across that way on Tuesday?
No. If he comes across as being disrespectful
Yeah.
and a bully, that's not going to help him.
No. Only Trump can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is black and white.
Yes, it is, and there
Up and down,
there is no middle ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about it. More than any time, any presidential election I can ever remember.
Yeah.
You know.
So you don't think there'll be a couple of people on the couch watching? And, hey, Mabel, you know what? I wasn't going to go for Biden, but he's pretty good in this debate. I think I'm going to go for him now.
I do.
Do you think that'll happen?
I think, well, if Biden does well, again, remember we were talking about, well, what does Biden have to do? He has to show that he's a guy, not a tough guy, you know,
Yeah.
but a guy who can stand up to this guy, you know, to Trump, a guy who can answer and you know, and do sharply, right, and go after him when it's appropriate. Then I think that can help Biden, because a lot of people, they don't really know him. They haven't seen him,
Yeah.
you know.
And more so, I mean, you don't think too many people are going to be sitting on the couch and say, hey, you know what? I wasn't going to go for Trump, but I really like this guy. I'm going to go for him.
Well, I mean, I think that's a possibility too. Let's face it, that's what they're both trying to do here with the diminishing number of people who are undecided. And I think for Trump, I think what he has to do is to move a little bit toward the center, more than where he is now, and really come across with I think some issues where he thinks, you know, he has the advantage over Biden, and can communicate that in a way that some people will say, yeah, you know what, the economy was doing okay before we had this the coronavirus, and yeah, you know, things are bad in the streets, and you know, the violence and everything. Those are things that I think Trump is going to have to push and do it in a way where he can appeal to that small group of people that still hasn't decided.